The candles were melting into the untouched cheesecake when her text finally came in. 8 words. That's all it took to hollow out the rest of the evening. Don't wait up. It's going later than expected. No punctuation. No apology. Just a vague dismissal, sent exactly 47 minutes after our reservation time. There were 2 chairs at the table. One for me. One for her. I had folded her napkin into a swan, clumsy but hopeful, and placed the little silver gift box in front of her plate. Inside was the bracelet she once pointed at 6 months ago in a passing moment she probably didn't even remember. I remembered. The waiter came over again. Would you like to order, sir? I shook my head. She's just running late. He didn't say what he was clearly thinking. I appreciated that. 3 tables over, a couple was celebrating something. She had frosting on her nose, and he was laughing like they were the only people in the world. I looked away. Her chair sat across from me like an accusation. I wanted to believe she was caught up with work, that Trent, her work buddy, really needed help finishing a campaign pitch. But that story had frayed at the edges weeks ago. It was unraveling fast. This wasn't a one-time ditch. It was a pattern. A quiet, passive abandonment disguised as busy schedules and casual shrugs. I paid for both meals, hers never ordered, mine barely touched, and left a tip bigger than necessary. I walked out with the gift box in my coat pocket and the swan napkin in my fist. She got home at 1:12 a.m. She tried to walk past me like she didn't see the porch light still on. Like she didn't see me sitting in the armchair, still wearing the button-down she said she liked when we were still honest with each other. Hey, she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. Long day. I didn't answer. Just stared at her heels, scuffed, like she'd danced. She noticed the cheesecake on the counter then. Half-melted candles. Uneaten. Oh, she said, smiling like it was a cute misunderstanding. You actually did something. That was the moment. Right there. Not the text. Not the empty chair. Not even the scent of someone else's cologne I pretended not to notice. That sentence. You actually did something. Like I was the lazy one. Like she was the gift. Like I was supposed to apologize for caring. She thought I'd be silent. Thought I'd swallow it down like always. But this time, I had already made my move. And when she opened that closet door the next morning and found half of it empty, when she saw the bank account down to a precise $11, with transfers logged at 3:47 a.m., when her phone service mysteriously disconnected and the joint lease was terminated with one digital signature. Let's just say, she stopped smirking. And that was just the first ripple. She didn't ask about the missing clothes until the 3rd day. Not the first morning when I left for work without a word. Not the second when I didn't answer her half-hearted, "Are you okay?" from the hallway. But on day 3, when she reached for her charger in the drawer and instead found a folded note and nothing else, she finally realized something was wrong. I had written the note on the back of one of her old Pilates class flyers, mostly out of spite. It read, "You missed dinner." I didn't. No explanation. No accusation. Just that. Because for once, I wanted her to feel confused. I wanted her to stand there, holding a flimsy piece of paper, and wonder where her world had gone. That morning, I didn't go to work. I parked 2 blocks away and watched from inside my car as she stormed out of the house in her favorite cream jacket, cell pressed to her ear, face red, scanning the street like I might pop out of a bush. I didn't. I watched as she tried to unlock my side of the storage unit with her copy of the key. I had changed the lock. Then she tried calling again and again. But she couldn't. Her phone still worked. Yes, but the family plan account? Disconnected. I'd split it at midnight 2 nights before. And every account I had access to was now rerouted, locked, renamed, or closed. She didn't just lose a dinner. She lost me and everything I managed behind the scenes. I wasn't doing this out of cruelty. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I was simply showing her that I still existed, that she couldn't erase me just by ignoring me. She sent an email that night. The subject line, "Are you serious right now?" The message itself was mostly angry guesses. "You're being immature. This is over a dinner? You're punishing me because I have a career?" Not once did she say sorry. Not once did she mention the bracelet. The one I had given to her, left inside the little silver box on the kitchen table. I never saw it again. I still don't know if she opened it or tossed it. But that wasn't the part that truly unhinged me. What sent my stomach into full revolt was a voice message. One she must have sent accidentally, thinking she had dialed someone else. It was only 5 seconds long. I listened to it in the car, in a grocery store parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. In the recording, she laughed softly. Whispered, he actually left. I thought he'd just sulk. That was it. That quiet confidence. That disbelief that I'd ever grow a spine. That I'd ever do more than mope and wait for scraps of attention. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror and saw something I hadn't recognized in months, a flicker of clarity. Maybe even pride. So I drove home, not our home, but the one I'd rented 2 weeks earlier, just in case. I sat on the floor of a small, half-furnished living room, drinking orange soda and eating cold ravioli from the can. Not glamorous, I know. But for the first time in ages, I felt like I wasn't holding my breath. She tried to knock that night. Not metaphorically, literally. She banged on the front door of our old house for 20 minutes. Called through the mail slot. Claimed she didn't do anything wrong, and that I was overreacting like always. That's when I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the window above the porch, just slightly, and said one sentence. You said I'd never leave. You were wrong. She froze. Looked up. I saw her eyes, wide, stunned, suddenly unsure of everything. And then I closed the window. Locked it. That was the night she realized her safety net had snapped. But this story's not over. Not even close. Because the next week, she made her move. And it wasn't just selfish, it was surgical. It started with a knock at my new door, but not from her. It was a courier. Slim guy in a neon vest, holding a cardboard envelope with my name handwritten across the front. I asked who it was from. He just shrugged and walked away. Inside the envelope was a printed letter, 2 pages. Not legal documents. Not a formal apology. No, it was a statement, as she called it, titled in bold. Why you overreacted and what comes next. I sat down at the edge of my mattress, still just a mattress on the floor, and read every word. She claimed she never cheated. That dinner with Trent wasn't a romantic betrayal, but a career necessity. She said she chose to build a life, and I chose to wallow in sentiment. She even wrote this line. I'll never forget it. You've always needed a grand gesture to feel loved. I've always needed peace. Peace? I wanted to scream. Was that what she called lying by omission, disappearing at night, and laughing behind my back? But the last paragraph twisted the knife deeper. She mentioned she talked to a lawyer, not for divorce yet, but to understand her options. She hinted that she deserved a portion of my retirement savings, since our marriage supported her ability to grow professionally. We didn't even share finances like that. But she was already looking for ways to slice the past into property lines. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I shoved the envelope under a pile of laundry and sat in silence for hours, trying not to spiral. But it got worse. That night, I noticed my email had been flooded with password reset requests, bank accounts, streaming services, even my work credentials. I changed every password, enabled 2-factor on everything, but I knew it wasn't random. I knew she was poking the fence, testing where she still had reach. Then came the phone call. My mom, out of breath, asking if what Elena said was true, that I abandoned the marriage over a birthday dinner, that I had locked her out financially and emotionally, that I was unstable. I could barely speak. She had gotten to my family. Twisted the narrative first, painting herself as the victim of a sudden meltdown. My mom tried to be neutral, but I could hear the disappointment behind every question. It wasn't anger, it was confusion. That was worse. I realized Elena wasn't panicking, she was strategizing. This wasn't about love or loss anymore. It was about control. About framing me as the problem before I could say anything. She knew how to play people. She did it for a living. I felt cornered. Not just isolated, but erased. So I did something I hadn't dared to do since this all began. I called my friend Jonah. Jonah was one of the few people who had seen the cracks years before I admitted they were there. He listened as I unraveled, telling him everything about the birthday, the bracelet, the messages, the voice recording. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you still have the laptop?" I blinked. Yeah. He told me to bring it to him. Said he'd take a look. Now, I'm not tech savvy, but Jonah is. And what he found turned my stomach inside out. The messenger app Elena used? It had an archived folder. One she must have thought was hidden. But it wasn't. Inside were conversations that spanned back over a year, messages between her and Trent that weren't just flirtatious. They were vivid. Explicit. Photos. Hotel dates. Comments about me. He's like wallpaper, one message read. I don't even think he notices when I leave anymore. She had used my trust as her silence shield. She thought I was blind because I chose to see the best in her. I wanted to believe her absence meant ambition, not infidelity. That was my mistake. But now I had everything. And the quiet man she thought would fade away? He was about to speak. And the way I did it would silence her for good. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The messages Jonah showed me kept flashing behind my eyes every time I blinked. I kept hearing that line. He's like wallpaper. I'd been reduced to decor in my own life. I was the background to her performance. But what haunted me even more was the way she carried on like she'd done nothing wrong. As if I was the villain for noticing. As if choosing peace meant betraying me slowly, until I stopped noticing I was bleeding. Jonah offered to help me expose her, email the conversations to people we both knew, maybe even send them to her office anonymously. But I said no. Not because I wanted to protect her. Because I wanted her to witness the collapse, quietly, personally, and without the chance to shift the blame. So I planned a dinner. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't vindictive. It was just the truth, served cold, on a table she couldn't ignore. I texted her that morning. Dinner tonight? Just us. You pick the place. It was the first thing I'd sent her in weeks. She responded within 5 minutes, probably thinking I'd finally come around, or was crawling back, ready to apologize. She picked a little modern spot downtown. White walls, Edison bulbs, overpriced portions. Perfect. I got there early. Brought a slim folder with me, slipped inside my coat. When she arrived, she looked radiant, too radiant, honestly. Hair curled, makeup sharp, a dress I hadn't seen in months. The kind of effort she hadn't made for me in over a year. She sat down across from me like nothing had ever happened. No mention of the missing clothes, the bank transfers, or the bracelet I was sure she never opened. Just a smile and a coy, "I'm glad you reached out." I let her talk. For 20 minutes, she rambled about work, Trent, office politics, even brought up a vacation she was thinking we could take once we patched things up. I nodded, smiled once or twice, let her build her castle of make-believe. And then I took out the folder. Her voice trailed off. I slid it across the table slowly. She didn't open it right away. "What is this?" she asked, brows slightly furrowed, still trying to keep her balance. "Your words," I said calmly. "All of them. Every chat, every photo, every plan you made behind my back. Unfiltered." She didn't move. Her fingers twitched against the folder's edge. The blood drained from her face slowly, like a rising tide in reverse. "I don't know what this is supposed to," she started. "Finish that sentence," I said, and try not to lie. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't have a comeback. She opened the folder. Read the first few lines. Her mouth parted slightly, then shut again. She reached for her glass of water. Her hand trembled. I leaned back, not gloating, not angry, just done. "I know everything," I told her. "And I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to tell you that I've already filed. You'll be served within the week. And Trent?" I smiled softly. "I sent him a copy too." Her face snapped up. "You what?" "I sent him all of it. Everything. In case he's as in the dark as I was. Or in case he wants to know how many other names you deleted from the archive folder." She went pale. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, deflating slowly, like a party balloon tied too tight. The waiter returned, asking if we were ready to order. She said nothing. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Ate every bite in silence while she sat there, too stunned to move. When I stood up to leave, I slid my half of the bill under the folder. "You wanted dinner," I said. "Now you've had it." As I walked out, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something far stranger, clarity. But I should have known. People like Elena don't lose quietly. And she was already planning her next move. 3 days passed without a word. I thought maybe that dinner had finally stunned her into silence, made her realize that for once, she couldn't twist her way out of the truth. I pictured her staring at that folder over and over, reading her own words and realizing how far she'd fallen. But Elena wasn't built for quiet regret. She didn't process loss like normal people. When she couldn't control the story, she'd rewrite it. I got the first hint when my boss called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable, rubbing the back of his neck the way people do when they're about to say something they don't want to. "We received a complaint," he said. "An anonymous email. It accuses you of unstable behavior, inappropriate conduct, and threatening your wife." I laughed, short and bitter. "You're kidding." He didn't smile. "I want to believe it's nothing. You've been here 6 years, lol. Never even had a late punch. But we have to take it seriously." I sat there, stunned. She was trying to burn everything she couldn't keep. If she couldn't win privately, she'd punish me publicly. "She's retaliating," I said flatly. "Because I left." He nodded slowly. "That's what it looks like. But just be careful. People don't need facts to get loud. After the meeting, I walked straight to my car and sat in the driver's seat with the engine off. I stared at the dash, not moving, not thinking, just trying to keep my pulse from cracking my ribs. But it didn't stop there. That same evening, my sister sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post. Elena had written a long, vague essay about a partner who became a stranger and the danger of emotionally repressed men. She didn't name me, but it didn't matter. The implication was loud enough. Her friends were already commenting with hearts and support and offers to help her rebuild after the trauma. I hadn't even said a word to the public. She was building a campaign while I was still catching my breath. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the screenshots, expose the hypocrisy, show the world the side of her I knew. But deep down, I knew how that would play out. People don't scroll to see evidence. They scroll for drama. She was counting on that. Instead, I kept quiet. But I didn't stay still. I booked a session with a legal consultant the next morning. Not just a divorce attorney, someone who specialized in defamation and false accusations. I walked into that office with a flash drive and a manila envelope full of screenshots, dates, and the full call log of that night. She told Trent, "He'll never do anything. He's too small." It took the lawyer less than an hour to nod and say, "We've got more than enough." We began building a response. A formal one. Nothing dramatic, nothing messy, but tight, professional, factual. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to hold the truth like a shield. Then something I wasn't expecting happened. Trent emailed me. I almost deleted it on sight, but something made me open it. It was short. No greeting, no small talk. I had no idea. She told me you were separated, that she was trying to get away from you quietly. I saw the messages. "I'm sorry." That was it. No defense. Just one guy realizing he'd been used, too. For a second, I felt a strange flash of sympathy. He wasn't a monster. Just another fool under the illusion that she only needed a little attention to be happy. It made me realize something sickening. Elena didn't fall in love. She collected devotion. She liked being chased, adored, pitted. She was addicted to the feeling of power, of being the one worth fighting for. And when no one was fighting, she'd start a fire just to watch the rescue. I wasn't going to rescue her anymore. The final nail came a week later, in the form of a manila envelope dropped at my new address. Inside was a single photo, grainy, clearly taken through a tinted window. It was me, sitting in my car, outside the lawyer's office. No note, no explanation, just the image. She was watching me. She knew I was pushing back, and now she was reminding me that she still had eyes. But what she didn't know was that I had already filed a cease and desist, that her post was already flagged for false claims, that my attorney had already scheduled a court meeting. She wanted a war. She was about to see what it looked like when the quiet man stopped backing down. And what came next? That was the part even I wasn't ready for. A week after the envelope with the surveillance photo landed on my doorstep, things finally reached the boiling point, but not in the way I expected. It started with a phone call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Madison, Elena's former best friend. They hadn't been close since the spa retreat incident, which I only heard about in fragments. Something about Elena talking behind her back, something about a guy they both once knew. It was messy, typical Elena, and I stayed out of it. But now, Madison was calling me, and her voice was shaking. "I'm sorry," she said the moment I picked up. "I shouldn't be calling, but you need to know something." She's not done, Lowell. She's saying things to people. Dangerous things. My throat went dry. What kind of things? She told people at her office that you were stalking her, that you were unstable. She implied that you've been following her, that she had to hire someone to track you just in case you tried something. And Lowell, she hesitated. She told Trent's ex that you threatened her with a weapon. I nearly dropped the phone. A weapon? That was beyond slander. That was calculated character assassination. This wasn't just a bitter ex spinning a story. This was premeditated sabotage. "She's not just trying to win the breakup," Madison added. "She's trying to ruin your life." After the call, I sat in my new apartment's dark kitchen, the only sound the ticking of a cheap wall clock I hadn't even hung properly. I was exhausted, beaten down, tired of defending myself without ever swinging back. But that moment, it felt like a switch had flipped. That night, I made a decision. Not to retaliate, but to shine the light directly on the one thing she couldn't manipulate. Proof. I compiled everything. Her archived messages with Trent, the photos, the voice notes. The call logs, the email from my boss, the anonymous HR complaint, even the photo she had someone take of me. I organized it all into a single folder and created a detailed timeline with receipts, timestamps, and correspondence. Nothing embellished. Just facts, lined up like dominoes. And then I sent it to the one person who had the most to lose from Elena's actions, her firm's managing director. No emotion, no accusations. Just a simple message attached. As you may be aware, there have been recent public claims made about me. I am forwarding this file for your awareness and internal review, should you feel those claims impact your workplace environment. I will not be responding further. Thank you. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. What I didn't expect, what absolutely floored me, was what happened 2 days later. I received a handwritten letter. Not typed. Handwritten. Slipped under my apartment door. No envelope. No signature. It read, "Heard from HR. She's on leave. You're not the first. Thank you for speaking up. A friend." I stared at it for a long time. My first reaction was disbelief. Then came this strange, quiet sadness. Because even though I should have felt victorious, all I could think about was how many people had probably been chewed up by her charm and manipulation before me. How long she had been spinning stories, feeding her need to be adored, and leaving scorched earth behind her. It was never just about Trent or me. It was about control, power, getting ahead at any cost. And now, for once, that cost had a receipt with her name on it. But she wasn't going to take this lying down. The next day, my phone rang again. It was my lawyer. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "She filed an emergency motion to freeze your financial assets." My heart skipped. "On what grounds?" I asked. He hesitated. "She's claiming you were hiding money during the marriage, that you manipulated joint funds and emotionally coerced her into dependence." It was laughable, completely baseless, but also dangerous. Because even a lie, if repeated with just the right rhythm and timing, can slow down everything. "She's trying to drain your energy," my lawyer said. "This isn't about winning. This is about exhausting you." He was right. She didn't need a victory. She just needed me too tired to keep fighting. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't alone anymore. My attorney had the documentation ready. Madison had agreed to submit a statement. Trent had quietly backed off and confirmed their relationship. And now, her own company had reason to scrutinize her. Still, I wasn't sleeping. I barely ate. My hands shook when I tried to pour coffee. But there was one thing that kept me standing. The belief that I had finally taken my life back from someone who never planned to give it back willingly. The next hearing would decide everything. And then, one final twist hit me like a gut punch. Because the night before the hearing, I found a voicemail from an unknown number. It wasn't her. It was her mother. And what she said changed everything I thought I knew about Elena. I didn't recognize the number, but something about the area code felt oddly familiar. Maybe I'd seen it on a Christmas card return address years ago. I let the call go to voicemail while I sat motionless at my small kitchen table, staring at the folder of court documents that had now become my unwanted morning routine. The message was only 31 seconds long, but I must have replayed it 50 times. "Lowell, this is Margaret, Elena's mother. I hope you don't hang up. I've debated for days whether I should do this, but after everything I've heard, I think you deserve to know. None of this is new, Lowell. It's always been like this. I'm sorry you had to learn the hard way. She learned how to manipulate people before she ever learned how to trust them. Call me back, if you want. I'm staying at the Glen Hollow Inn for the next 2 days." I just sat there after the message ended. Elena's mother had always been quiet, polite, and distant. She sent birthday cards, always signed Margaret, never Mom. She never offered advice or judgment, which I once interpreted as respect. Now I saw it differently. Now I wondered if it was restraint. I drove to the Glen Hollow in that afternoon, no appointment, no plan, just a sick feeling in my stomach like I was chasing a ghost through a hallway full of locked doors. She met me in the lobby. Her posture was rigid, her blouse perfectly ironed, her expression heavy with something that wasn't quite regret but wasn't apathy either. She led me to a private lounge area and didn't ask if I wanted coffee. She just started talking. She was 9 when it started, Margaret said. The lying. The games. She'd steal things from her cousins and then convince them they gave them to her. She once convinced her piano teacher that her father hit her so she could skip recitals. I didn't interrupt. My hands were clenched on my knees, and I was afraid if I spoke, I'd lose the fragile thread of whatever this was. She hated consequences, she continued. She learned to cry without tears before middle school. By high school, she had boys wrapped around her finger like string. She used to write fake notes for me to get out of class. Eventually, I just stopped asking where she was going. I could feel myself unraveling with every word. I didn't tell you this before because Margaret hesitated, then looked me dead in the eye. Because you were the first man who actually made her work for anything. And for a while, I think she respected you for that. But that only lasts until the illusion cracks. What illusion? I asked, my voice dry. That she's the center. That everything she touches should orbit her. The second she feels unseen, unwanted, unvalidated, she tears it all down and rebuilds somewhere else. I leaned forward. Did she ever hurt anyone? I mean, really hurt someone? Margaret's silence was answer enough. After a moment, she said, there's a woman in Denver. A therapist. She may not tell you much, but she knows the version of Elena you're seeing now. It felt like every puzzle piece of my marriage, every strange argument, every gaslight apology, every random shift in tone, was suddenly snapping into place. I had spent years trying to make sense of mood swings, cold shoulders, emotional landmines. I told myself I just wasn't understanding her well enough, that I needed to be more patient. But I wasn't trying to decode a person. I was trying to survive a performance. I left the hotel feeling like I'd swallowed cement. I didn't call the therapist in Denver. Not yet. I wasn't sure I wanted to know what else lived in that shadow. When I got home, I found a bouquet of lilies on my doorstep. No note. Just the flowers. I didn't need to guess who they were from. Elena always said lilies looked like forgiveness in bloom. It was her signature guilt gift, her go-to whenever things got out of hand. She used them after fights, after secrets, after long disappearances. The flowers always showed up before she ever did. But this time, I didn't bring them inside. I left them on the porch. Let them wilt. Let the wind take the petals one by one. Because that was all it ever was, petals and illusions. I spent the rest of that night preparing for court. Every document sorted. Every timeline rehearsed. Every statement cross-checked. The hearing was in 2 days, and for the first time in this entire mess, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I felt like I was closing a chapter. But Elena wasn't walking into that courtroom to lose. And I knew, deep down, I hadn't yet seen the full scope of what she was willing to do to keep control. What happened in court wasn't the end. It was the explosion before the ending. The courthouse smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. The kind of place where words become weapons and everyone walks on eggshells, waiting for a gavel to change the shape of their life. I sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in the same navy jacket I wore to our 5th anniversary dinner. I hadn't noticed until I buttoned it that morning how strange that it still fit, though nothing else in my life did. Elena walked in exactly 3 minutes late. She wore white. Always the dramatist. She walked like a woman arriving at her own coronation, lips painted in that muted rose shade she used when she wanted to look gentle. But I wasn't looking at the makeup this time. I saw the tightness around her eyes, the thinness in her smile. She wasn't here to win anymore. She was here to survive. The judge didn't waste time. Everything moved fast, too fast for the years we'd spent tangled in silent resentments and half-healed wounds. She spoke first. Her lawyer tried to paint a picture of neglect, confusion, emotional withholding, and yes, even financial manipulation. They brought up my sudden departure, the closed accounts, the fact that I'd disappeared without warning. But I'd come prepared. When my turn came, I said nothing fancy. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't perform. I presented the timeline. The messages, the audio clips, the surveillance envelope, the fake HR complaints, the phone log. I even read her quote out loud. He's like wallpaper. I don't even think he notices when I leave anymore. By the time I was done, the courtroom was silent. Her lawyer's face was pale. Elena didn't look at me once. The judge ruled quickly. All emergency motions, dismissed. All financial claims, denied. Marital dissolution, approved. No support owed by either party. Protection from retaliation, granted. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. As I left the courtroom, the sun hit my face like I hadn't felt in years. There was no music. No slow-motion walk into freedom. Just me, holding a worn folder of papers that finally, truly meant something. 3 months later, I signed the lease on a small lakeside cabin an hour outside the city. No noise. No neighbors. Just peace. I started walking every morning. I'd take Nacho, yes, the cat, with me in a little harness. He hated it at first. Now he climbs onto the porch railing and watches the geese like they owe him money. Madison and I talk sometimes. Not romantically, just human to human. We both went through her storm and came out on opposite banks of the same river. One day, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "You were right to walk away. I'm working on myself. I hope you're okay." I didn't cry. I didn't even feel much of anything. Because forgiveness isn't always about reopening the door. Sometimes it's about closing it gently, locking it, and planting something beautiful on the other side. I'm okay now. More than okay. I'm free.